everyone. Welcome to our weekly book study. Thank you for being here. So happy to join with you all again. This is like my favorite. Oh, let me turn that off. Okay. For sometimes that going live on YouTube ends up with the volume on. Sorry. Anyway, I'm happy to be back again this week. This is a highlight of the week for me and for many of you. And I just love it. I don't plan to stop. It's just too much fun. This week, we're looking at chapter 4 in Rupert's awesome book, You Are the Happiness You Seek. More and more, we come to realize and know how true this is. And what a relief to know this. And this week, we are graced and honored to be joined with Jenny Sheehan. Hi, Jenny.
Hello. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here today.
So good to have you back. And looks like we're in Jenny's living area. Her sofa's behind her. And I don't know if
I'm comfy.
Is the dog going to run in and jump up behind you and sit and
Possibly.
Good. Well, it's a she, right?
It is. This is she. Yeah.
She's welcome. Looking forward to it. And Jenny, this week, chapter 4, The Art of Self-Inquiry. What do you think?
I found it an amazing chapter. I found it so simple, and it really can just take us back to the beginning of our journey. And the first story, the first couple of pages of the chapter is essentially a lovely story. And it goes, gosh, not only do I remember that experience of that young man, but yet it's also describing a practice for us now.
Yeah.
And just the eloquence and simplicity and realism of it just I think can speak to everybody. It's not any fancy concepts or anything difficult to understand.
Yeah. And I just I want to back up a little bit. Apologize for this, Jenny. I didn't give any introduction for your who you are, and other than being I don't know if you're still an MD, but you were an MD anesthesiologist, spiritual seeker, and lover of truth. Tell us, is there anything else that we should know or could know about you before we get into the teaching?
Oh, yes, and no worries, Bill, none at all. I'm really glad to be here, and I'm finding I'm starting to enjoy this Jenny experience, which is new to me for mostly a life of not enjoying it. So all I can say is if the promises that Rupert's made have held true for me, they can hold true for everybody.
Is this a recent experience for you? What you're describing, is this recent?
Yes.
A recent change?
Yes. Very, it's the establishing part is happening for me. And even just this past week, I had some kind of a virus, and I honestly was like, wow, this is total ego death. This is amazing. just experiencing a completely quiet mind. So it's all really fresh and raw for me. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Well, I think it's really good to stop here. I mean, not to stop here, but to hear what you have to say is music to my ears and to many, all of us. I see smiles on faces and people are like connecting with the joy that is expressing itself through those words. And this is the real deal. This is a real experience, and that's why I think it's an important reflection for others to hear and to marinate in, because this is true for all of us. Yeah.
Absolutely. I could describe how diluted my thinking has been, and how closed I was to any concept of God or love. And in simply, well, the way the end of the chapter describes it, by following questions, following reason, paths of reason, and taking them to the end point where the mind can't, there's no answers left, that something spontaneously happens. The mind spontaneously gets quiet. And I am not special. I am not special. I had the gift of desperation. The gift of desperation, no doubt. So to inquire and to pursue, but of course that's just the gift of grace, self calling to self, and wake up and realize what's true. So whether you're only a little bit miserable when you have to spend a weekend at a family reunion, or if you're kind of miserable all the time, which is how I experienced life, despite a mask of appearing fine. It was like the grossest kind of ego stuff that you can think of. It's a gift to literally lay around for a few days in a row and be at peace.
Yeah, it is a gift, and it is grace. And thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And I know that all of us do. And now looking at the art of self-inquiry, chapter 4, where you started, what's your favorite part of this first page?
Well, like the co-host before me, let's just look at this quote for a moment by ACIM. Of all the koans, I is the most profound. And a koan is a riddle, essentially, a paradoxical type teaching used in a Buddhist, in Zen traditions, from a master to teacher, to take the mind to the end point of its being able to answer questions. And to really think about that, the single letter, the single word I, is the most profound paradox. And what we've learned from Rupert, just for a quick second, it's because the same I, when I talk about Jenny, I am going to the store, is the same I of God, the Logos, the first, what do you call yourself? Rupert mentioned in another chapter. And if God could talk, it said I. And think of the synergy and complementary and singularity of that. it's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also where all the trouble starts. When we attach that I to the bodysuit that has our identity, we lose that important I. We lose
We sell ourselves short, so
yeah,
short.
yeah, right. And we become that thing that is a imagined, layered on idea that's been nothing wrong with it. But I like when you were talking a few minutes ago that now that you know the I am, the truth, now guess what? Jenny gets to enjoy herself. Jenny gets to be who she is, and knowing she's not who she thought she was. Oh my God, that's like out of prison, in freedom, still living in a bodysuit.
Patty, you're adorable. Raise the roof. But exactly, Bill. And that's, we're talking about Jenny, but that's for everybody. And just imagine for a moment that the movie that has been playing of your life is the movie that you're supposed to have the starring role in. And there's how can there be regret? What of those what ifs? It's like, no, I've been starring in the movie I was supposed to all along. And not egotistical, not meaning like mine's the only movie in town. No, there's 8 billion of these movies playing, and they all come together to show us that love has no form, truth has no form, can't be pinpointed, and this is right and this is wrong. It's like, oh no, man, we're in a cinema with 8 billion movies playing. It's incredible.
Yeah. And actually even more, because even the inanimate objects are also in the play. So it's
absolutely. I think about it. Look how aware an ant is. That ant, it's not bylining in one direction. It's changing its directions. It's climbing up over things. It's stopping and pausing. It might pick something up and say, and even a rock.
An ant stops and pauses? What are you saying?
Absolutely.
That's a cool idea.
Well, and even asphalt, look how alive our roads are. There's clearly awareness. If there's response, then one would say, well, there's something that's aware within it. Where does a pothole come from?
Yeah. Well, that's where there's a little tweak of a difference, a little tweak. I used to have that same idea, thinking that objects are aware and that animals are aware, but what's true is that the ant, the trees, the Bills and the Jennies, they all rise out of awareness. And then they go back into the nothingness, and awareness remains exactly as it always is. Yeah.
I was getting a little carried away with myself. So
Jenny, and thank you, Rick West. It's good to see you back this week. I know we missed you last week, and I see you're doing your chatting thing in the chat board, just as you always do. Always brilliant comments coming from Rick. Thank you for that, and for the others that are joining. And Jenny, let's keep going on this first page and see what Rupert has to say that we can then elaborate on.
Absolutely.
And we are going to go to 115. And if you have questions, please use the raise hand feature. We added 15 minutes to the book study. Thank you, Josephine, because I could see that we weren't given enough time for the guys, for the men and women that are here that have questions.
Well, it starts on the first page of the chapter with a question. Can you give me an example of self-inquiry in action? And Rupert recalls a story from a young man's experience at one of his retreats. And the young man flat out came out and said, if my essential nature is freedom, peace, and happiness, why do I suffer so much of the time? And that's a fair question. And he went right to the heart of Rupert's teaching. But Rupert's answer, it would only be necessary to disidentify yourself from the content of experience if you were identical to it in the first place. So from that very simple answer, we realize that, there's something, experience is happening, yet I am what is aware of this experience, not identical to it.
Yes. Yes. It's in my mind, this is the first example that Rupert offers that there's a pause and identify subject and object. It's and we all, that's the like the portal of attention. It's the portal of being aware. That's to be, reminded over and over and over 1,000 times or 10,000 times, whatever it takes to make that your new default, because that sums up everything right there. That's those two sentences.
Absolutely. And then to follow down a paragraph, Rupert says, the space of the room is already and inherently free and at rest. And you are like that, he suggests. You only need to recognize yourself as such. Just what you were saying, Bill. But here comes, we get to some of the juicy part. The young man says, so what's keeping me from doing that? Just an old conditioned habit, says Rupert. And this, a lot of us come into Rupert's teaching with a little bit of understanding, this old conditioned habit. We might give it different names: the finite self, the ego self, the mind-body identification. But it's a habit of the mind to get stuck in previous ways of thinking. And at the very bottom of the page, what are some of the assumptions that we make, the habits, the conditioning our mind kind of gets stuck in a loop about? And Rupert says, the primary assumption is that our essential self or being is conditioned by or limited to the content of experience. And what did he just tell us a couple paragraphs ago? No, we're inherently free from that.
Yeah. And that's where he started with the I. The I is the assumption, or takes the assumption, or it assumes its identity in the content of experience.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And of course, this is from a very young age, we have kind of been taught this, and we don't blame, we take responsibility. And it seems to be a passage of life, but that the things that seem to happen to us, the time that we're stuck in, the space that we seem to be stuck in, makes us what we are. And Rupert is simply pointing out, no, those things are temporary and not essentially what you are.
Yeah. So a sidebar, Jenny, as a mom, how old are your kids?
They're 19 and 20 right now.
So as a mom with this understanding, are you raising them different than you used to with the language that you use?
Yes. Of
Yeah.
course, I could say, oh, if I had only known sooner, but it wasn't the time yet. The time was perfect when it was, but absolutely have been messaging my daughters differently the past few years.
Yeah.
And really just gently reminding them when they seem to be in a situation that's causing them a lot of upset, that their thoughts and feelings and circumstances are temporary and they are what is aware of those things.
Yeah. So the reason I mentioned, I say that is because you just said, we're conditioned to that that habit. And I have a vision that things are changing. I have a vision that in 100 years, we'll raise our children different, or in 50 years or 20 years. Even now, I don't have children that age anymore. Mine are much older, but I see a world that is transformed into this, not the conditioned self, but the knowing of the self. That's my vision and dream. So anyway, I took a kind of a sidebar over there, but I think it's relevant to what we're talking about.
And I will just support that. I'm amazed this Generation Z, they are wiser than we think. And they are doing things differently. And it's pretty amazing. You'll notice with your grandchildren, Bill, it's not the message is changing. It is.
Yeah. Yeah. They're coming in with different, like they don't want to be identified. That's sort of a clue, gender or, otherwise. Like my grandchildren, they have friends, but they can't tell me their friend's name because it's or she or he. But I think it's part of that thread.
Right.
Yeah. We think it's crazy, a little bit like, what do you mean they don't want to be him or a her? Well, keep going. It's unfolding. Anyway, let's keep going. Let's move to page 28. What do you see on page 28 that you'd like to highlight?
Right. Well, this is exactly the self-inquiry method is shown in the beginning of these pages. A practice one could use whenever we catch ourselves confused or deluded from recognizing the peace that we are. And he takes the three steps. Rupert stops him from describing a memory. Then the young man says, I feel like I'm destined to suffer all my life. And Rupert points out, now you're telling us about a feeling. So there's the two steps of the path of self-inquiry.
Yes.
One is saying, oh, I'm talking about the past. I'm talking from memory. Two, oh, I'm describing a feeling. And then three, Rupert says, the young man begins to say, I think it's and Rupert stops him and says, don't tell us about your thoughts. Boom, that takes the young man to a place of his mind is blown. It spontaneously reached the end of its ability to think.
Yes. Yeah. Nirvana. That's when I first met Rupert, I told him in the meeting that he was blowing my mind. And he said, "That's nirvana. That's what nirvana is."
Oh, I love
But
that
that's
definition.
what he did. Boom.
Cool. But Bill, you read the next part. I hear your voice
Uh,
with the I and the
oh,
long
yeah.
silence.
Okay. He says, "Tell us about the I to whom your thoughts appear." There is a long silence. Ah, perfect, I said quietly, although reluctant to disturb the silence. I did so because I sensed thought beginning to take over again. You have undeniable sense. You have the undeniable sense of simply being. I is the name you give to that being. Tell us more. I love this.
Yeah. And he paused. He could only find the words I am, and then nothing left to qualify the I am. There was no condition to put on it. There was nothing he could limit with the words. And yeah. Rupert says he was giving his attention exclusively to himself, to the fact of simply being before in any way it is qualified by his experience. So in that moment of that man's quiet mind, there was no struggle with the content of experience. He had simply become more interested in the nature of himself.
Yeah.
And boom, that is, if we make a concession to the mind and say, yes, sometimes we need to practice these things, we have just been given a lovely practice for what to do whenever the habit of the mind, and it's just a habit, it's just a conditioning, it's no one's fault. And I'm not bad when it happens. I've just simply forgotten. And that I am portal that Bill was talking about, I've gotten pulled into the things that are happening around me, the drama of experience, and I've forgotten what I am, which is that which is aware of the experience.
Yeah.
And we have that freedom to step in and out of that doorway any moment we choose to.
Yep. Yep. Let's pause there and pick up a couple of comments on the chat. Rick has quite a few, and we'll look at a couple of his. Going back to 1208, Amy Habel said, "What is unreal? Self-inquiry? If practiced with genuine intention and honesty, isn't all of it real? Yes, we go through layers of conditioning. Yes, it takes desire for truth. And yes, we can think we are there, but then discover we are not. And then forgiveness must be remembered as part of the inquiry. And then we pick up and begin again." It's much easier than that. And that's what the point of these references are, Amy. It's really bringing the attention as awareness is a forgiveness on steroids. It's like you don't need the word forgiveness. You don't need that step once established in the I that is prior to any other words. that's prior to anything else. So that's, I wouldn't bring the forgiveness piece into this, except that to say that awareness, seeing that place that is self-inquiry and established, that is what forgiveness is pointing to. So you can go past that once this is understood. So I would just add that.
Well, and the simple question is, who thinks I've screwed up here and have lost it? What is it that thinks I've done wrong and I've lost it? And that simple kind of question points, again, reflects back to itself. It's like, no, the real me hasn't screwed up, hasn't made a mistake, hasn't lost it. But I have noticed that my mind, the one that likes to pick on myself and let me know that I stink at things I try to do, that I have identified with that thought and feeling in my mind, instead of taking a step deeper inward and saying, wait, but that's not really me. That which thinks I have failed is not the real me.
Right. It's the old identity trying to hold on to itself.
And we can't even blame that either.
No, and that's fine. Nothing. It just needs, once that's understood, it diminishes its pull. And I want to refer to something else that Amy said at 1228. And she said, the body is a powerful magnetic pull out of I awareness. It wants conditioning. It wants limitation. It thrives on control. And as ACIM says, it is a fence we build around others, this world. And yes, the recognition of our true nature, the body is conditioning in form. 100%. You get 3 A+ and go to the front row.
A great student,
Thank
Amy.
you, Amy. That was great. And wait, one more thing. Rick said something that was really great here. I want to pick up on it. 1223, self-inquiry isn't self-help. Thank you, Rick. The dream state, ignorance, can't be resolved from the perspective of the dream state thought. That's just rearranging the chairs on the Titanic. Rather, discover the source itself, what you really are. This is the root, the crux of the issue. Without getting to the root, the weeds, suffering, will only flourish. That's awesome. Well said. Thank you, Rick. And then there was a couple of other things. Rona said, these gatherings helped to remember what I am. Yeah, me too. Thank you. Shelley, I know I am there when suffering stops in its tracks when I remember what I am. Yes. Peace comes right in, man. And certainty, and you just feel like, oh, I could stay here for a while, right? Yeah, exactly. And then Dan said, I have noticed that much of the teaching seems to go out the window when we add Putin and what's going on in the Ukraine to the mix. Oh, no, we don't. That's just a trigger that is seen. So if you use those as signals and then see the activity of Dan, the movie Dan, and don't log in, then you just remain as the presence. And then Dan is informed from there. And it's only based on facts. It's not based on emotions and beliefs and good and bad, right and wrong. It's just factual. You're not sucked into the old self identity. So, Jenny, where would you like to go? We've gone about halfway down on page 28. Where would you like to go?
Well, just to take us to the end of the page, the young man sounds like he had a glow from his being and a smile on his face, and
Yes.
he simply said, "Is it that simple?"
Yes. Yes.
And Rupert, you can picture him probably nodding his head, yes, we want to make it complicated. That's this lovely gift of this direct path version of the non-dual understanding, that it is simple and direct, and there's no condition or qualification that has to be met in our circumstances in order to remember our true self. It is that simple.
Yes. Yeah. I want to, I think we should highlight and put to the top of the page, is it that simple? Is it that simple? Because that's it. It's so simple that we miss it.
It's so simple, it's unbelievable to the mind that thinks it can't be that simple.
Right.
To that finite self, mind body identification that wants to stay as it is, even if it includes suffering and pain, so afraid of change that it refuses to believe that it can be this simple. Yeah.
It's really, it's like astonishing.
It's astonishing. But Amy, the next page made me think of you, because later that day, the man says, "What if the old suffering comes back?" And Rupert says, it will out of sheer habit. If mind conditioned to think in certain patterns based on beliefs that go, remember, not just from, me as a little girl born and what I learned. If we're one being, there's a collective conscious and unconscious that's billions of years old. These are the conditioning patterns, the habits of what we think is true. That's how deep it goes. So it's okay. Hey, let's expect them to come up, because it's healing for all of us, as what bubbles up in me in a moment of forgetting myself is healed for everyone. And it can be as simple as, if I hear something on the news about Putin and it makes me upset, that is it direct. I am directly aware there's something in my mind that's upsetting me now, and it might be worth to take a pause and look at it. Just as Bill said, it's pointing to the truth. It's pointing us to the returning to the self, the pathless path back to the self. Yeah.
It's pointing to the thing that doesn't judge or have a label or preference. It's pointing to the thing that is aware of the experience always.
Yes. And so here in the very next paragraph, this is kind of a summary of the practice that Rupert might say as a concession to a mind that thinks it's stuck in its ways of thinking. But whenever the old conditioning does return, all that is necessary is to trace your way back to your essential being as you just have, and rest there as that. Every time you do so, you are weakening the old habit of becoming lost in or identified with the content of your experience, and instead are becoming established in your true nature of peace. Like Bill mentioned, that instantaneous coming together, which could be described as a peace, a knowing of a peace.
Yeah. I like, I mean, this just sort of verifies or reestablishes that paragraph that if it happens and you say, well, I keep drifting out of alignment. I get triggered, and then my kids, they just know me, or my partner knows me, or the news, it just sucks me in. And what he says right there, what you just read, rest there as the awareness of the experience. And what I like to say is, don't touch it. And he says, do so, and you are weakening the old habit of becoming lost or identified with the experience. So it's a weakening. Just keep doing it 1,000 times a day. Yeah, maybe. Just keep doing it. And what I've noticed, and I think most of you also have noticed, that it does become weaker. That old attraction, it has a weakening effect on it. It's true.
Well, it cannot stand.
Yeah, it's when we log in. See, some people take a lot, and there's an energy that comes with those charges, those triggers. There's an energy that we sort of like. We sort of are addicted, like a drug, to that energy. And when that addiction weakens, it no longer has the pull that Amy was talking about to suck us in. Yeah, that really does kind of wrap up this paragraph that you just read, that Rupert mentions. It sort of wraps up that idea with this young man. I mean, if you're in the middle of a argument with a partner or a spouse, that pause and resting there without opening your mouth can save your marriage, can save your relationship.
And yet it's being in the moment. Something may come out of your mouth that surprises you, and you don't even know where it came from. And I might even judge it as unloving, but yet in that moment, with an open mind and open heart to being used through this mind body, may it be known, it's not always saying yes, or just patting someone, saying, it'll be okay. At the end of this chapter, it talks about authentic teaching, because in that moment, what comes out is perhaps what needed to come out. And I'm not going to ration my words and out of fear of saying anything that might be upsetting to the other person. Now, Bill, I hear what you're saying. I don't mean to undermine you at all. You're exactly the whole premise of turn the other cheek.
I like what you just said. I'm not feeling like I got stepped on at all. This is open, uncensored book study. Susan does that. Susan likes to challenge me on stuff, so everyone is welcome to do that.
Well, thank you.
But I didn't feel that was a challenge at all. I felt like that was an addition. As you pause, you're moving into a space that's open to receive divine intelligence, an intuited statement of truth that the Course in Miracles says that you may say something that startles you. So you may say something that you go, holy shit, did I say that? You just don't know.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
But the catch, the conditioned, the belief in a self that is defined by circumstance and situation, the habit of the mind that wants to just say the same old things over and over, that just to give the same answer to the same situation, that's what we're trying to get away from. We could say that's where my suffering is rooted in doing the same thing over and over and over in these, conversations that we have with people that don't go anywhere. You said the words divine intelligence. I can tell you it exists. And as you play with these ideas and you practice these things, you don't even have to be perfect. You start to notice that the quality of the way your mind thinks changes. And what's amazing is that it is how Rupert describes, open, empty, qualityless, limitless. It has all these open qualities that are just rooted in love, which of course has no form, but we can get a taste, that perfume of what is loving, what it might look like in the world as we begin to practice just these basic, simple things of pausing, like Bill said, like I call it, put down a white flag. I mean, even if you don't have time in the moment, because you're in the middle of a work meeting or something, pick it up later. And, when you're driving home from work, say, what happened in that meeting? Because I noticed I got really angry when, Mr. Smith said, blah, blah, blah. Those are the things asking us to look at.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a comment in the chat from Rosalind. Hi, Rosalind. She said, everything is part of awareness, even ignorance. And the truth does not always feel loving at first.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Here. That's so true. Thank you. And then Susan said, Einstein's definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Thank you for those comments, you guys.
Yes.
And I want to go back to this idea that you just affirmed, that divine intelligence. I like hearing this coming from a doctor. I like hearing this coming from someone that's in the medical field, that studied, that's a scientist of the biological system and more. And so I like hearing these verification come from you. Thank you, Jenny. Because you guys are mostly, you start out and you're trained, at least I think the training used to be, the doctors were more skeptical of spiritual things. Doctors would think, and I think that's changing because they're realizing that, oh my God, meditation and calming the mind has an effect on the bodysuit.
Absolutely. And, I like this situation I find myself in now. It's not that medications or surgeries are bad. It's just that they're only a part of the story. And if it's just the body's way of communicating, it needs attention when there's dysfunction, because we could say the body would reflect a healthy mind, the natural state of our being, open but that's another day, I think.
That's another story. Yes. Let's keep going. We're almost finished with 29. What else do you see on page 29 you'd like to highlight?
I realized I've used the phrase a couple times already, but I got it from this page about 2/3 the way down. You know, to trace oneself back to their true nature and rest there is a compassionate concession that is given to one who believes and feels that they are a suffering self. And here we go, is as we realize, it's someone had a comment about, what is real and what is, it's not inherently kind for me to tell someone like, oh, you just think you're an ego and you're believing you're a body and it's not real. What, like that is not helpful to a person in that moment who's believing that they're suffering. And
Yes.
so it's, again, be where we are, wherever that is, if that's, practicing, remembering 1,000 times a day of the truth of what our nature is. It's okay to simply retrace and to go back. All I've done is forgotten. And it's just a way to remember these steps of self-inquiry.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and then to wrap up the last sentence or a few sentences on this page, it is not something you become through effort or practice. You simply recognize it is what you always and already are. That is, it recognizes itself in you as you.
Exactly.
And then it leads the way. It leads you no longer by habitual beliefs and experience, but it leads in emotional preferences, but it leads you from a place you are not familiar with.
Right. And that, of course, is the compassionate concession, because there is no other you in charge.
Yes.
To speak of myself and this Jenny movie that I didn't really like starring in, wishing Jenny was this or that, or da 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 da, when really there's no Jenny in charge of any of it. It's all happening through the body mind. And
Yes.
but that's the concession we have to make. And it's a loving concession.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
Jenny, let's move to page 30. What would you pick up on page
Sure.
30 that you would like to highlight?
Gosh, well, it finishes up the story of the young man at the conference, which is a beautiful thing. And Rupert says about in the middle of the page, as soon as the suffering arises, it is met with the mirror of understanding, and suffering effortlessly dissolves. Self-inquiry gives way to self-abidance. That's what Bill was talking about, kind of a melting in a space of rest, a moment of just rest. The happiness we seek is revealed as the happiness we are. This understanding is the fulfillment of the search. Period.
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 Right. Right.
The happiness, the title of the book, the happiness as we seek is revealed as the happiness we are. That is the essence of what we need to accept as a new understanding of what we are.
Yeah. It's really, I really, this is what Rupert's done for me, is the understanding, the way he has delivered this content, is that the search is over. The search, once this understanding is known, established, he really is the piece that I needed to help me realize that the search is over. And it's also super simple. And I saw someone in the chat say, yeah, but it's not easy. Well, it's not, because we're addicted to this. There's an addiction here to being a bodysuit with a lot of attributes, a lot of great things or things that we hate about it that we're addicted to. So, but other than that, everything is fine. It's super simple. Keep going.
Well, and you even develop compassion for this. And it's not an entity. To describe it as an entity, as an ego, this finite self is not the best way to think of it.
Yeah.
Because of course it's the activity itself of the mind that perpetuates it. But let's just like make a concession and say this, we have to have compassion for this ego that really works so hard to maintain itself. And you have to ask, why? Why would it work so hard to maintain itself? It's because it dissolves in the truth of this understanding.
Yeah.
It dissolves, which sounds scary, but it's freedom. So.
Right. Yeah. And I want to move over and say, totally agree with you, Rana, and also Meg and Amy. Thank you for your comments in the chat. And Amy said, we are home dreaming of exile, ACIM. That's true. And then Melanie says, Rupert's image of the moth and the flame. That's what you were just describing. Yeah. So let's finish this this page.
I did like at the end when the last paragraph, the journey is the pathless path from ourself to ourself, from the happiness we seek to the happiness we are. Ironically, it is almost always necessary to embark on some sort of journey before this becomes clear. So this is that compassionate concession. I remember Rupert even said, even Ramana Maharshi himself, now his journey was short. Apparently it only took like 30 minutes. And then he never really forgot again, or however, wonderful his journey was. But that there does seem to be some effort that needs to go into this process.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with efforting. If that's where you are, effort away. It's yourself calling to yourself.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, that's what A Course in Miracles did for me. The Course in Miracles helped me to look for myself in a psychological way, in an inner journey of looking, which brought me to Muji, which brought me to Rupert, which brought me back to the Course. And now I read the Course differently. And I can tell that Amy Habel, who's a Course student, you can tell she's a Course student. This content is also helping her to read the Course differently too. It helps everyone because you're reading it from a different perspective and a more awakened, a more open perspective. So let's move to the next page, to 31.
Sure. Again, it's a question and answer, a spontaneous teaching we get privy to from Rupert's experience. I've been haunted by a feeling of being a failure and not having fulfilled my potential. I've tried many approaches to help with this, but it just persists. Can the practice of self-inquiry help me? And Rupert goes right to the heart of it. He basically says, absolutely, but we don't spend time on the feeling of being a failure or not having reached some potential. We're going to go deeper than that. We take care of the source of all afflictive emotions. And this has to do with exploring the I believe I am. So it's about the third paragraph down. When we explore the I around whom our suffering revolves, we don't find a self who's frustrated, unfulfilled, anxious, lonely, ashamed, and so on. We find our essential being, which is completely free of any such feelings. That is to say, it finds or recognizes itself. It is open, empty, at peace, and without any sense of lack. This is our natural state.
Yes. Yep. And this is sort of like this is if you're not there yet, this just keep going, and this will be your experience as well. Be gentle on yourself, be patient. And for you all that need to leave at 1, we're going to stay till 1:15. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your participation, for everyone online, and we'll see you next week. And Jenny, I just want to move to the next paragraph. The last couple sentences says, once we have been accustomed to this natural condition for some time, it simply becomes the new norm. There it is.
Right. So the practice and efforting and trying that seems to be prevalent at the beginning of this desire to know one's true being, it gradually dissipates. It's absorbed in itself. And the efforting doesn't seem to play such a prominent part. The word Rupert uses, and Jenny Beal has, establishing in the self, where it's a new way of being. So still yourself in the world, but a new way of being shining through, no longer limited by all these, I think of it as like the hustle and the Schadenfreude and the jealousies and the hates and the angers and the false beliefs. Those things fall apart. That's the efforting, the practice. When I catch myself in a thought of jealousy, a feeling of jealousy, giving it its due right and paying it attention, as I do, strip myself away by those questions. I'm not this feeling. I am not this thought. What am I? And with the practice of that, it's not a new sense of self. It is simply the familiar sense of self that always accompanies us, that is us, but is now relieved of its previous agitation and sense of lack. And so if there's work to do, it's just that, noticing when I'm upset for whatever reason and unpeeling those layers off. I realize that what I am is not inherently identified with any of those things. If I can peel it off, it's not part of me. It's just temporary.
Yeah. Very good. There was Holger said, what am I, or who do I assume myself to be? So I feel that whatever your few words that of self-inquiry that brings you back to the attention of self-awareness, what is it that's aware of this experience, or that quiet pausing, being aware of thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations, and just gently abiding there without judgment, preferences, without even, the idea that you need to figure this out, just being aware of the personal self movement, or the movie, the Jenny movie, or the Your Name movie. Notice, notice, notice. Rick West says, much less about doing. Yes. Yes. Okay, let's keep going.
And that's a scary step. But I would say, if you haven't given up stuff yet that you do, you haven't gone there yet. You question everything. Why am I doing this? And there, it's in that will take you where you're trying to go.
Yeah. He mentioned that. He mentioned that too on the last the second to the last paragraph. If a person has an inquisitive and sophisticated mind, I know a lot of you. There are many, many of you. If a person has an inquisitive, and I love you, and I'm not criticizing, but there's a lot of you that are in this sentence. If a person has an inquisitive and sophisticated mind, then it is likely that they will raise objections and question every aspect of the searching. If such a mind is not acknowledged and honored, and I love this, this is so great, it tends to become frustrated and angry. This is for you. In order to pave the way for the understanding and love that it is, and love that is the essence of the teaching, to be taken deeply into the heart and body, it will in such cases be necessary to elaborate refined lines of reasoning. For such people, it is only when the mind's objections and questions have been met satisfactorily that they will be open to a new possibility. Yay! High fives.
Absolutely. Yes. And let's just finish reading this. In this case, the teaching will give the mind complete freedom to explore these matters as much as it wishes, and even encourage it to do so, thereby allowing mind gradually, naturally, and effortlessly to bring itself to its own end. And that's all of a sudden, that's the peace, that's the happiness. We actually just kind of want our mind to simmer down and allow divine intelligence to be in charge, instead of all these habits and thoughts and beliefs running the show. We just want them to simmer down. And it's beautifully, this is a concession to the fact that you don't really need to practice or do anything, because it's a pathless path to ourself. It will happen. I may think Jenny's doing something, but I'm not, right? It's all happening through me, but that the mind gradually, naturally, and effortlessly brings itself to its own end.
Yes, yes. Oh, and that really helps me as a teacher, a facilitator, to be very open to people that are all very inquisitive and questioning this, and not in a, well, you could take the position, well, who is it that wants to know? Well, that's silly, because that doesn't give satisfaction to a mind that is, you could call it an ugly name. You could say, a busy mind, and, you don't need to do that, but that's not it. It's a mind that's active. It's a mind that's intelligent. It's a mind that wants to know. And then when it's satisfied, it's quiet. That thing got answered. it has nothing to hold on to with its inquisitive nature and its intelligence.
And Rupert gave us a lovely demonstration of that with the young man by asking those simple questions. Remember, is it really that simple?
Yeah.
Yes, by asking yourself those simple questions, you can take yourself to that end where the mind has simply nothing to say.
Yeah.
And there you are.
There you are. And there's Amy Habel mentioned a couple of workbook lessons that I just want to reference. She mentioned 108 and 158. And Amy, because she also mentions in the chat that this answers, page 32 answers why it's important for A Course in Miracles, the value of A Course in Miracles. Now, I love A Course in Miracles because it tells me why I do the things I do, and it tells me how to look at things. And then you can go beyond the Course and you can be established as what the Course is pointing to, which is where the direct path, it's where Rupert's teaching comes in. You no longer really need the Course to be established as yourself, because you know yourself. And the Course has a workbook lesson titled, or I forget the title, but it's 189, that it says, once you come to this understanding, forget this Course, forget this world, and come with wholly empty hands unto your God. And I would even take the word God off of that. Come with wholly empty hands unto what you are. But the workbook lesson that she mentions is 108. To give and to receive are one in truth, because there's only one. There's only oneness. And then 158 was, let's see, it was similar to that one. 158 was, let's see what it was. Sorry. 158 was, today I learned to give as I receive. Well, Amy, thank you for the references to those two workbook lessons. I'm going to go back and read those. And how would you like to end our session together, Jenny?
I'm just in gratitude to be here with everyone and sharing, supporting our like-minded path journey together is one of the most amazing things we can do as humans. And Bill, I want to thank you for holding this space for us to come together. And you don't ask for money and you don't ask for time. It's truly a gift for us all. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And you're right. I actually do it because I love it. I love what we're talking about. I love this, this camaraderie. I do my best to try to bring everybody in. And if I miss you and you're, I can't keep up with Rick. He's just like, he's 150 words a minute guy, but he has great comments all through the session. We did miss you last week, Rick. And thank you all for being here. Thank you, Jenny. It's so good to have you part of this.
My joy. Thank you.
And Rosalind Rourke is here. She'll be our co-host next week. Thank you all for being here. And we'll see you next Wednesday at 12 Eastern. Love you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.